Cape Town's proposed N2 Edge safety project, the N2 wall, currently in a formal procurement and scoping phase, major construction slated to begin January 2027. But last night saw the launch of a campaign to oppose the city's proposed 114 million rand into security wall. The movement for care gathering last night at Sissy Gool House to launch its Cost of Care People's Budget campaign. Joining me now is Nkosikhona Swartbooi. Good morning, Nkosikhona. Really appreciate your time. Let's start with the obvious. The N2 has a serious crime problem. What, in your view, is wrong with the city spending 114 million rand trying to make motorists safer?
Good morning, Lester. Good morning to your listeners. So our starting point is that this is about safety, but also about what kind of a city we want. And our question is simple: is spending roughly 140 million in a war the most effective and evidence-based and socially just way to make people safer? And as Movement for Care, we are not anti-safety. We recognize that crime and insecurity along the N2 are real. And people who travel along the N2, work there, who walk there through surrounding communities, or live alongside the highway have legitimate fears. But a real safety problem does not automatically mean that every proposed solution is the right solution. And so if you look at, firstly, the city's own database that was produced by the Public Emergency Communication Center, they recorded in January about 8,552 calls that were made for assistance on the N2. But only 86 of those incidents were crime-related, which is just over 1% of those. That doesn't mean that crime isn't the problem. It means we need to interrogate whether the wall is actually responding to the main safety problems on the N2. And before spending 140 million, the city of Cape Town should be able to show a clear evidence that a wall will significantly reduce the specific forms of violence and insecurity that we're dealing with.
But, Nkosikhona, a budget for the wall was passed in the city's budgeting process, tabled and passed in council at the end of June already. Building is expected to start in January. There's already a procurement phase. If you're launching a campaign now, after a budget participation process has already closed, what is now your campaign to try and prevent this wall? If the political decision has been made, budget has been allocated, now it's time for build phase.
Correct, and that's one of the issues that we are highlighting, that we highlighted in last night's meeting. We had about roughly 200 people who came through from across the city of Cape Town for that meeting. People concerned about the wall being built there. One of the main issues that came out from last night's meeting is that if any organization or institution wants to participate in the city's budget process, you are to be registered as a community in the COD database, so community-based organizations database. So if you are not part of that, you will not be consulted by the City of Cape Town, because you may be registered at Social Development, National Government, but if you're not registered in the city's own database, you will not be able to get the consultations that they're running. And we're saying that's a huge way of discriminating against people who will not want to associate with an organization, or people who do not belong to an organization. And we're saying these decisions ought to be made publicly, and the public to be invited to participate in saying whether this is a good idea or not. The very communities that will live alongside the wall have not been properly engaged by the City of Cape Town. The only engagement we saw was when the mayor of Cape Town, Gordon Lewis, went to Kylie Chaunyanga and did a 45 minutes walkabout. And that was the only sort of meaningful engagement that was done. Obviously, the city could do better. The city ought to engage those communities who will live with that wall. And the question that those community members are asking are particularly saying, yes, we can see that there are interventions being made for those who will be commuting along the N2, but we must understand what is happening on the N2 in terms of the crime, that it's an overflow of what you are confronted with in these communities. And so we don't see or hear the mayor saying anything about the safety of those who live in the communities along the N2. And so if this is really about safety, we should be having a conversation that's deeper than just building a wall, to say, how do we keep our communities safe? And we can never wall away crime. We must look into interventions that actually are inviting of community members to be a part of this conversation, instead of just building a wall which we think will resolve all these issues. A wall will not resolve crime in Cape Town. We have deep crime issues that need intervention from all tiers of government. Extortions are high in Cape Town in terms of the gangs that are extorting businesses. And people do not feel safe within these communities. How are we solving for those? And not only just for those who are motorists along the N2. We want safety, but we want safety for everyone who's affected by the crime that we are solving for in building this wall.
Nkosikhona Swartbooi, really appreciate your time. He's the coordinator of the Movement for Collective Action and Racial Equality, Movement for Care, launching a campaign last night to oppose the N2 Wall project, even though it's been budgeted for. There's already procurement. Buildings expected to start in January next year.